KZ earbuds that's over 200 bucks. I bought it. Time to see what it is made of. Today we're checking out what makes the Extra Pro actually pro compared to the regular Extra. But why would I end up dropping over $200 on it? Stick around and you'll find out. Hello friends, welcome back. This is Jessie. If you know the KZ brand, you'll get that it always had its super distinctive, almost obsessed vibe, cramming the almost max performance into every dollar you spend. When it comes to the KZ, all I can think of is their 20 bucks XTRA Pro, the 40 bucks ZS10 Pro, and those crazy big projects of theirs with 8BA, 16BA, or even 24BA drivers. Yeah, I know, when you crack them open, 8 out of 10 BAs are usually dead, but who cares, they're under 50 bucks. Most of the time, I only buy KZ because my inner collector is acting up. And let's be real, series like the ZS or the EDX, you can never go wrong, just pick any one from them. And like, when I got the KZ ZS10 Pro 2 the other day, it even had a built-in DSP decoder for switching EQ settings. Plus, there are 4 tuning sliders on the earbuds themselves. And if you mix in different ear tips, let me do the math. I could technically get 64 different sound vibes. When I got it, I messed around with like 4 or 5 combinations randomly, and they all actually sound pretty solid. Yeah, the bass mid treble density isn't anything mind-blowing, but come on, it's fun at least, and the sound tuning isn't way off. For just over 30 bucks, it really does the job. But when I suddenly saw the Extra Pro tagged at 2000 RMB, I was like, wait, what? I checked the store, it was definitely the official one. I even thought, did they mess up the price? Like, was it supposed to be 199.99 RMB instead of 1,999? Come on, the Extra only costs around 200 RMB in my country. Shouldn't it be just like 32 bucks, just like on the AliExpress? But honestly, I have the trust in they made me go, and fine, I will try it. Let's see what makes it worth 2000 RMB. But here is the thing, once the price gets jacked up that high, sound isn't the only thing you got to count for anymore. And right now, in how we judge earbuds, the only ones over 200 bucks that feel worth it are those big brand ones with a whole ecosystem behind them. I rack my brains. How do I tell if an earbuds sounds alone is worth 200 bucks? Then it hit me. It's not. It should only cost 32 bucks. This is just a Chinese company that sells super cheap overseas, then turns around and rips off Chinese folks with sky-high prices. Alright, done complaining about getting ripped off. Let's get back to today's real deal. What's the difference between the KZ Extra Pro and the regular Extra? And at what price is it finally worth buying one? Before Extra Pro arrived, I made a point to listening to regular Extra for 2 days, then swapped to the Pro. The thing about this is, I wouldn't get tripped up by the Pro's price tag, its Pro label, or my own hype. I could just feel straight up which parts actually got better and which were just fancy rebranding. Both of them stick to KZ's classic, thin, cold, sharp sound vibe. The Pro sound is better, but it's the kind of better, like where they polished what was already there, not a total overhaul of how it sounds. The Extra's bass boost is only about 8 dB, super restrained, right? But it's spread out so wide that it still makes your head strum a little. When I blast Bad Guy on it, the bass has plenty of oomph, and the bass hits hard every time. You can feel it. But here's the catch. When the bass gets dense, it's like one big blob of energy bouncing around instead of each drum hit having its own sharp shape. You know it's loud and feel immersive but lacks clarity, and in messy parts, the bass tends to bleed into the mix too much. But when I switched to the Extra Pro, the bass didn't hit like the frequency response curve said it would. Instead of getting punchier, it's actually toned down a bit. Turns out that the dip at 200 Hz makes the bass way more separated. There's more bass overall, but it doesn't spread out like the regular Extras does. It stays pretty close to your ears, and it doesn't hit any deeper either. But here's the thing, every drum beat's attack, decay, and bounce are way clearer now. You can instantly tell which hit is the main rhythm and which is just the background fluff. But to be honest, if we only talk the bass performance, the XTRA Pro doesn't feel like it's pulling its weight for the higher price tag. It just took the messy, the spread out bass from the regular model and cleaned it up a tiny bit. But there is still no heavy hitting and measured bass that wraps around you or make you feel that air getting pushed pressure. What it does do better is keep the bass in line. More control, less chaos, but it's not like the bass gets bigger or gets impactful overall. In contrast, the XTRA Pro offers a flatter, more neutral reproduction. This difference is most apparent with female vocals. When listening to Adele's Easy on Me, a track I routinely use to judge the quality of the mid-range, her voice on the XTRA is clear and forward, effectively conveying the emotion. However, you can clearly tell that the vocal presence is achieved through the heightened brightness and a forward position, rather than sheer density. The resulting impression is a voice that is clear, yet somewhat thin and slightly hazy. Switching to the XTRA Pro makes the change stark. The vocals are no longer in your face, they gain thickness and feel much more solid. Her voice isn't just a clear shape anymore. It has real body and weight to it. But here's the catch. That weight feels odd, thin, dry, and a bit grainy, like a piece of metal. It flattens Adele's vocal resonance, making her sound somewhat just shouty and thin. The XTRA Pro's mids aren't warm or thick. When the sound hits its peak, the emotion feels controlled and the sound is very rational. It doesn't try to romanticize the music, so you can get a more realistic vocal instead of a more beautiful one. It is the classic KZ, a safe bet that won't surprise you, but it probably won't wow you either. If you love a large, enveloping mid-range, looking elsewhere. The high-end rolls off smoothly, but because the XTRA Pro does almost nothing to boost the 10 kHz, it doesn't have that last bit of the air expression. For most earbuds, that's a bad thing. But for the XTRA Pro, it's actually a saving grace. This lack of the upper treble energy is what keeps it from the sounding sharp, sibilant, or messy. A clever way to keep the sound clean and controlled, even if it means the top end isn't the most exciting. Let's take Daft Punk's Giorgio by Moroder as an example. On the XTRA, the treble initially come across as quite bright. Elements like the hi-hats, the synths, and electronic details are all easily heard. However, as the track's density builds up, the piercing edge of these details becomes apparent. They sound unnaturally scattered and lack cohesion. I'll be blunt. Certain instruments, like the French horns, end up just sounding like fart, completely losing their intended brass texture. On the XTRA Pro, the highs don't get more detailed, they get smoother, and the details are still here, but they just blend into the music better instead of jumping out at you. It's more about taming the sharp edge than adding some new abilities. That said, the treble extension is still limited. You don't get much ultra treble information, so it lacks that extra air and spaciousness. In terms of pure resolution, it's still adequate but not outstanding. When listening to Hotel California, the original XTRA soundstage isn't particularly narrow, but it lacks depth with sounds primarily spread out left and right. The XTRA Pro offers a marginal improvement in stability and separation. The boundaries between the lead vocal and the accompaniment are clearer. However, the soundstage isn't truly expanded. The sense of front-to-back distance remains limited, and the presentation still feels relatively flat. This isn't a case of noticeably larger soundscape, but rather an improvement in distinctness. It's the difference between slightly muddled and perfectly clear, yet the overall state perception remains two-dimensional. The packaging of the XTRA Pro makes me feel like I just bought a $10 trinket. Can you even imagine the heartbreaking disappointment of spending a significant amount of money only to be greeted by this flimsy box? The case itself has a design that screams the generic wired earbuds. The main issue with the round shape is the minimal contact area, which makes it impossible to implement a proper magnetic or the mechanical latch. So when you open it, the lid is just flimsy and wobbly. The touch feeling is very poor, coupled with this plastic transparent cover, which scratches incredibly easily. The whole unboxing feel is honestly no different from a $2 novelty item. Furthermore, the XTRA Pro used exactly the same shell mode as the standard XTRA, with no significant optimization. The only change is the gold-colored coating. And both models share the same uncomfortable fit. The nozzle is excessively long, causing deep insertion to be painful, while a looser fit leads to be unstable, and the earpieces loosen with every smile or word spoken. After several days of testing, my ears were nearly chipped. I'll stand on the edge of the cavity, intend to lock into the ear for stability. Instead, it's uncomfortable. I suspect very few people will find their feet tolerable. The touch control is a nitric. It works by using the metal panel. It conducts your tap for play or pause, but because it relies on just sense a touch on this one spot, it rules out having slight controls for volume. It's a trade-off. You get a sleek look, but lose some functionality. KZ quotes a negative 55 decibel noise cancellation rating. Before testing it myself, I subjectively feeling was like that. This was probably heavily inflated. And trust me, from all my past ANC tests, I can usually estimate a noise cancelling curve to within about 3 decibel, but the KZ actually surprised me. The test data shows that the XTRA Pro offers significantly more stable noise cancellation performance and a more powerful low-frequency algorithm compared to the standard XTRA. The ANC performance itself is technically decent, with no obvious reverse amplification of the treble noise. However, in practical use, the low-frequency noise cancellation is just so-so. It's only reduced the rumble of an air conditioner by about 50%. The reduction in human speech is just barely noticeable. I could clearly hear my colleagues chatting nearby, and the most concerning issue is the noticeable ear pressure. This pressure isn't static, it changes, noticeably increasing when ambient noise grows louder, and this means it's not a sensation you can simply get used to after a few minutes. The only explanation I can find for these shortcomings is the poor fit. Because the ear tips cannot be inserted securely and deeply due to their uncomfortable design, they fail to provide an adequate passive seal, which is crucial for effective mid to high frequency isolation. So if effective noise cancellation is your priority, look elsewhere. I can never recommend the KZ XTRA or the Pro model. While recording my video, I realized I could no longer find the previous purchase link. So it's unclear what the exact price of the KZ XTRA Pro is meant to be. On their official websites, the listed price suggests it should be around 800 RMB. However, whether we are talking about the old $32 price on AliExpress, a $75 price tag, or even a 2000 RMB price point, it all points to one conclusion: KZ's pricing carries a massive and unjustified premium. Well, this is exactly why my score makes sense. If it's under $30, it's a stable basic pick. But if it's above $30, don't spend your money just to hurt your ears, okay? If you want a bin-style earbuds, the Rosella Ceramics MK2 or anything else is way more comfortable and sounds much better and much cleaner and much engaging. is a much better choice. Alright, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Hope this video bring you some help. See you next time. Good one, Jessie.